Okay, hello. This is another episode of Reflections. I haven't done a lot in a long while, but I'm back on the train here, and so this episode of Reflections, I'm going to do it with Richard Lewis here. You know him from the Daily Dot, previously EsportsHeaven. These websites been around a long time. Used to write about Counter-Strike Source, obviously StarCraft 2. Now he's in League of Legends. I don't know if you do any other games at the moment, because I don't follow any other games. I'm a bit antisocial evening gaming in that sense. So you might, I don't know.
Now and then.
Okay, so here's what's interesting. We can start this interview off by showing how different perspective can be. Because we actually did a really long interview. And it was only something like, I think it was like Gamescom 2012? Let me think.
I think so. Yeah, it was one of your grilled series.
So it really wasn't there even that long ago. Let me think. No, it must be 2013, I assume. Okay, Gamescom 2013, I think it was. So that's really not that long ago. It's like let me think. It's like not even 2 years, much less than that. But at the time, let me just set the stage for everyone. At the time, I used to work for Esports. Like all I did was the grilled stuff. You never saw me on camera for start off. I was just a guy. I was a voice behind a microphone who no one got to know who I was, you know. You at the time were just the editor-in-chief of some UK-based esports website that was like doing its best to try and make it on the come up. I don't think you were that involved in League at the time. That you did a few stories, but you weren't like fully into it. You were still in StarCraft 2 a lot, still in other games.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not even that long later. What's changed since then? Like now you're like a personality, right? You come fully into League of Legends. What's changed since that year and a half or so?
Personality's one word for it. It was. It's been a strange one. As you know, we talked about it. The EsportsHeaven job at the time was incredibly demanding, and the amount of work that was going into that was really taking its toll on me. You know, it wasn't just the day-to-day running of the website, managing a team, having to produce the articles, and being under so much pressure because people knew my name. My articles would typically be the ones that would generate the most traffic. So having to produce as many of those as possible while also editing everyone else's content on the website and having to act as a consultant in other capacities and help with the business side of running events and whatnot. So I was stretched incredibly thin and very washed out at the time we did that interview. I mean, I went in a very strange mindset because it wasn't a particularly great event that we attended either. I'm sure you recall there was barely any press facilities. And there was certainly no press facilities for esports journalists whatsoever. Stark contrast to when IEM had been at that event, and ESL always ran a good event from a journalistic perspective. So when we sat down and did that interview, it was always at the back of my mind. This could be kind of a swan song at this point. I'm pretty sure I said the opposite during the interview, but in the back of my mind, I was kind of thinking this could effectively be an opportunity to write your own eulogy and.
Okay.
you just answer the questions, and Thorin will ask the right ones, and you can bow out of esports, and you can point to this as some sort of high watermark. And then I started thinking about whether I wanted to keep working in esports, and I started thinking about maybe I just need a change of scene from Heaven Media. You know, I'd been there for 6 years. I'd loved the guys there, but the job was killing me. We had to do things I didn't particularly enjoy in a bid to succeed, and it was very hard. So I thought, well, maybe if I get a change of scene, I'll be able to get out and it'll renew my vigor. So I'd joined this agency called GEM, Global Esports Management, which was run by Tobias Tumba Sherman. He'd previously kind of managed and acted on the interests of people like Tasteless, Artosis, other people like that. And I had butted heads with him so many times in the past when I wrote those Land of Broken Promises articles in StarCraft. GEM were a particular target of mine.
Yeah.
I was like, look at these guys. They're funded with shady money and their bullshit and all of this. So when he offered me the representation, the opportunity to be part of it, I just accepted, because again, having thought about everything that was going on at the time, this will be a great story to end on. I'll join.
You'll see the inner machinations of what was going on, right?
Yes, exactly. To see how the Wizard of Oz is truly operating, and see the little man in the room. So I accepted it, and it was always with the view that this will be the last story. I'll eviscerate all of these idiots and then leave. Scorched earth policy on the way out. And they set me up with this, let's do a career map for you. And we had some very professional meetings based around that, and they were really encouraging. And I was like, okay, that kind of seemed cool. And then we made a decision that I should take the plunge and leave EsportsHeaven, and leave Heaven Media after 6 years, and we'd be able to get a job elsewhere that I shouldn't worry. I mean, I was living in a state of almost perpetual fear, because I'm not like a lot of these young bucks in esports right now who can kind of bounce back after several failures. I'm a man in my 30s. There's bills to pay, and opportunities could arguably be thin on the ground if I was to walk away from a job. But in my heart of hearts, I knew it was time for a change. And my agent Toby was very good in sort of giving me the fortitude I needed to make that change. And certainly by that point, I'd started writing more about League of Legends. I'd started producing what I consider to be better work overall. And I was, as you say, I was becoming more of a personality in the scene. So all of that kind of combined into a perfect storm. I made the decision to hand in my notice and start applying for other jobs. And that's kind of how I ended up at the Daily Dot and positioned where I am now, which, as you say, it's a bit weird. I've never put too much stock in the whole game of popularity. I find it to be a false economy for the most part, but certainly hell, I'm verified on Twitter now, Duncan. So
okay. I don't even know how one does that. So that's already like futuristic technology to me. I'm like a tribesman who've just seen a camera or something. I don't have any idea what this does. You might have magic though, yeah. Okay, but along these lines then, you mentioned something there about when you were with this agent, you did this thing like map out your career. Now, we're not saying it's like a perfect thing, like it has to go this way, but just, I guess what that'd be useful as an exercise, right, is to see where you see yourself at the time, what's possible, like what avenues you can go down at that point in time. So I don't want to ask, like, did it go exactly the way that was, etc. But can you, is it revealing too many secrets to give us an idea of where you saw, like, what were the possibilities, what were the directions you could go in that you thought, like, yeah, I'd like to go this way, or this is what could happen in whatever 1-2 years? Because like I was saying at the beginning of the interview, when you put the perspective even just of where we were when we did the last interview, I don't think either of us could know what the scene would be like now, where we would be now, and how things would have kind of like transmuted, because in some ways they're better, some ways they're worse, but I don't think I could have predicted either of them. So what was that initial period like when you made this career map out? So like at the time, like you were saying, you were just an editor-in-chief guy who was doing these stories, and the way you're describing it there, I kind of get it, because I was in a similar position. It kind of felt at the time like the reason why you can't leave that job is because it's kind of like a glass ceiling. Like, well, this is as far as journalists can go. You become the editor-in-chief. You get to choose the stories. That's about it. And you get this much money, but is there ever going to be more? And you definitely at the time, I imagine, wouldn't think, as I wouldn't have, that you could write elsewhere, just be the writer, make more money, have more freedom and all the rest, because that was the whole point of being an editor-in-chief, right, was to get the benefits.
Yeah, it was. It was strange. It's one of those classic examples of kind of having to take backward steps to go forward, I think. And I don't just mean in terms of job satisfaction. I definitely mean overall in terms of progress. So going to the Daily Dot was great for me. I work under a former professor of journalism who is able, I think, to teach me things and has helped me improve, which is great to still be able to do that when you're in your 30s. Not only that, I'm working under people who are veterans of the print industry. The person who owns the Daily Dot is from a family that owned I think 11 newspapers in one particular state. So these are veterans of print media, and they're very serious about driving it forward. And for them to respect my work and to give me input on my work is actually hugely valuable for me, and something I wasn't getting. That part of me wasn't being nourished elsewhere. I don't mind revealing the secrets. I'm all for transparency. What's good for the goose has to be good for the gander. So when we sat down and we did the career map, I mean, this was interesting because Toby was coming at it from a perspective that I wasn't even really looking at. And that was, have you ever thought of yourself as, a moderator, a host? No, I absolutely hadn't at all. I'd done some hosting. In fact, I did a fairly disastrous hosting appearance at a Mad Cats event alongside one of their employees, who I believe used to be on TV in the UK, under the persona Bad Boy Barry or something. And it was
I can already imagine. I've got a visual already.
Yeah,
it's a very really British thing, isn't it? That sort of like I'm imagining he had sort of like a Chris Akabusi type personality, like high energy. He was trying to rev the crowd up. Probably didn't know that much about games.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, and I was being brought in to kind of legitimize it and to talk sensibly. But of course, we weren't on the same page, so there was no. We were meant to have some banter and some repartee was going on. It was really awkward and embarrassing, and not necessarily because of anything that Mad Cats did or anything that he did. Actually, I thought my performance was subpar. I got thrown into it at the last minute, and I thought, wow, I never want to do that again. And that's coming from somebody who's done stand up, somebody who's been on stage quite a lot over the course of his life, and I just thought, I don't want to do this. This is horrible. But Toby was like, actually, you could be a really good host. You could be a good moderator for discussion. You could be like, think of kind of a Dimbleby type character. You sit there and you moderate the discussion. You could be very good at that. And I was like, well, yeah. And there was this little thing in the back of my head, I won't lie, the ego saying, actually, you shouldn't be moderating the discussion. You should be the discussion, right? You are the discussion. Okay. But I was trying to suppress that for what was good for career purposes. So that was one thing. That was kind of like a phase one.
So is that actually where the talk shows and stuff came from? Did it come directly from that?
Pretty much. I mean, obviously, I'd had a little bit of experience in being the guest on talk shows. I never thought of myself as a co-host on Unfiltered, even when I was officially named a co-host. For me, it was turn up and talk. I didn't really contribute anything creatively to the show. Chanman did all that. Chris did all that, and me and Stephen were effectively the iconoclastic characters that were allowed to run riot and generate that entertainment value. And Chris was the guy that was in the middle, trying to marshal us all and any of the guests that he brought on the show. So I mean, I never thought of myself as a co-host. So yeah, I guess it did kind of come from that, although obviously I had done shows before. But the primary thing was the idea of going to an event and hosting an event. And I don't know if it was coincidence, but almost the moment we put that phase one in place, all of a sudden DreamHack are asking me, do you want to come and host an event? Twitch are asking me, do you want to run our player lounge? And there was this validation for me. There was this, I've been effectively brainwashed. I mean, this is the reality about, because, I've always cut a controversial figure and I've never shied away from difficult topics. There was always this thing that was being drummed into me, by my employers. I don't think it was malicious or malevolent, but it was there. It was being said to me. There was this unwritten rule that you will never be employed by anybody else. No one would touch you. You're too much of a toxic asset. Okay. You're too hot-headed. This is where you belong because no one else would touch you. So I that was part of the reason why I stayed, because I thought, what if they were right? And then to get those job offers from companies as prestigious as DreamHack, Twitch, this was a validation. It was like, well, maybe I have got something here that people want and are willing to utilize. So, phase one was the hosting. Phase two was getting me positioned into a website that would, reach a bigger audience and showcase my ability as a journalist a bit better. And obviously, OnGamers was the first choice for that, as you know, and that didn't work out.
Let's talk about that then. Like, Ed, you don't have to skip over that. Listen,
no, sure.
I mean, I'm not even sure if that site exists right now, so it's not like we're breaching any big secrets or whatever.
I don't.
It's very much like a ghost waiting to disappear from the room, I feel. So I have a question about that though, which is,
sure.
At the time, even if I hadn't have been a part of OnGamers, okay, I remember when Slasher was just telling me about it before, and it was going to be this, that, and the other, and it wasn't certain I would join at the time, you know, because, I mean, like yourself, I was in a position where I thought, like, God, I don't know if I can leave this position, like, maybe I should just stay here, like, is it worth the gamble, what if it goes wrong, will anyone hire me, all these things that are just natural, I guess, insecurities that you can get over the years. And so when I heard about the concept of OnGamers, even though I didn't know if I was going to join it, I thought that's a pretty good concept, actually. That's a cool concept. I wish that had existed before. A site where you really could just be like the content creator, but within a team, but without having to be the editor-in-chief, without having to have responsibility, or without having to like carry the site yourself, you know. So you could, in theory, if you have a bad month, it's not like, oh, I have a bad month and I've just fucked everyone at the site, and I'm, you know, this is a lot of pressure to have in some ways, you know.
Absolutely.
So when the concept exists, I thought, what a great concept. And obviously I was lucky enough that I got an offer and I was in a position where I could actually leave and I could join up. The time period you're talking about of when it was discussed whether you could join OnGamers, people have to realise OnGamers didn't have a very long lifespan. I think it lasted like a year and a half or something. Well, technically it's still alive now, Rich, but you know what I mean. It lasted a year and a half.
I couldn't agree with you. I think it is simply a matter of time before we read that particular obituary.
So in that case, though, the timing of when you were going to join was sort of towards the middle period. Okay, it'd been around for a little while. It established it's like people had a sense of what it was. At this particular point in time, I remember we discussed this. When you didn't, okay, I'll just break it down for people. It was brought up as a suggestion, like, should Richard join this site? And people within the site, because it was a site essentially, it wasn't entirely a website where like it's a top-down hierarchy. It was sort of like a stable of talent, and so they want to keep the talent happy. And if enough of the talent say, hey, we don't want to go a certain way, then if it's something that the management thinks like, okay, well they can win this small battle, you know, then they would go that way. And so that sometimes it came that way with hiring people, or are we going to do this type of news or something, you know. Certain battles could be decided by the employees. So as a company and in terms of employees, people in general said like, oh no, for whatever reasons, like maybe someone didn't like you, they had beef with you before, or someone just thought, oh well, it'll be like, believe it or not, some people thought we've already got Thor in, that's too controversial enough, like we can't be putting out that many fires at once. Which, yeah, cheers to everyone who said that, by the way, but okay. And they would even say it to my face as well, by the way. Like, I'm in the room here, guys. And then other people just thought like, oh well, you know, maybe we don't need him. We've already got people right now, and everything's fine as it is. From your side, though, when this opportunity was here, I get the sense that you looked at it like, okay, well, all these other big names within this site and all the stuff they do, Slasher, Travis, Thorin, Cyborg, Matt, all these people, like I'm one of these people. Like this site makes sense for me. You know, it should be a shoe-in. Like I should be the next guy in, and then we'll continue on as like a team, and it'll be like a team effort. Wasn't this kind of the vibe you're going for? Because it didn't sound like it was a normal job thing of like, well, I'll apply and I didn't get it. Well, whatever. You kind of felt like a bit slighted by that, right?
Yeah, well, it's a very strange situation. My relationship with OnGamers is incredibly complex and layered because I was offered a job. I think right at its inception. Without really knowing too much about the project or who would be involved. And I turned it down then and said, I don't like the idea of a big company or corporation coming into esports, throwing money around and trying to buy up all of that talent. Seen it before, not interested. Then a little while into OnGamers, I was offered a job again. There was some discussion about, you know, would you like to come on board? And I said, absolutely not. I see you as being part of the problem in the landscape in esports currently. I think you're beholden to companies like Riot. I think you're dependent on people like that for traffic. I don't think you ever want to do anything hard hitting, and I don't think I would be a good fit for you at all. So I'm going to have to decline. You know, and it was made quite clear that it would be a pay rise and it would be all of these things, but that didn't interest me at all. You know, we know about here today and gone tomorrow in esports. We've learned that lesson all too well in our time, and I did believe that would happen. I did believe it would be mismanaged, but more importantly, I just didn't want to be in a place where I was going to be shackled. The one great thing about the Heaven Media job, as stressful as it was that I had autonomy, that no one was ever going to tap me on the shoulder and say, don't publish that, or you've gone too far. That was never going to happen. Those were my decisions. That was my discretion. I didn't have that impression about OnGamers. Then, when I started having the discussions with Toby, when I started to want to leave Heaven Media, I really started to kick myself about turning that down, because I started to think about me, not my principles, just me the person, and how I needed money and how I wanted status and success and all of that stuff that everyone did. And I started thinking, I fucked this up. I should never have turned it down. You know when you start getting those doubts and they erode your basic principles, and they start to erode the standard to which you hold yourself accountable. I mean, this is how people become susceptible to doing things they wouldn't ordinarily do, like taking bribes or whatever. This is how it starts. That self-doubt and fear that you're gonna lose what you have. You're gonna not be able to pay the bills, this kind of thing. So I started regretting it. Toby had, who was good friends with Kim Rom, who managed the whole thing, had opened that door again for a discussion. But the problem was, this was the most unconventional and convoluted recruitment process I'd ever gone through. And it was incredibly stressful. I was 1 foot out of Heaven Media and looking to find, being a clever monkey, you don't let go of one branch till you've got hold of the other, I was trying to make sure I could get into OnGamers. But it was insane, Duncan. I don't know what you went through when you joined, but I mean, first of all, there was all the initial talks and about how difficult it might be, and how people in the team and existing staff didn't like me and were actively resistant to the idea of me joining OnGamers. But it wasn't just that. I had an interview with a chap called Hunter Lee across Skype, and during the interview, he would do things like, on October the 14th, I mean, that's just a random date, but on October the 14th, you said on an episode of Unfiltered that everyone on Reddit should drink bleach. Why did you do that?
Yeah.
Right? So these were the type of questions in the interview, and I was like, it's a joke, And he's going, well, you're saying that our young esports audience should, kill themselves, and but I'm joking, mate. And this was the interview. I probably still got the interview. But anyway, it was insane. It was an insane level of scrutiny. But I passed it, and Hunter said, for me, it's a hire. So I started feeling very good. I thought, I'm going to be at OnGamers. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to finally join all my contemporaries, and we're going to do some good work. And of course, this was all before Slasher shit the bed and effectively hammered the first nail or maybe the second into the coffin. So in literally a few weeks before, because I remember me and Toby laughing about how I dodged a bullet when I did, at this point a few months before, but I remember me and Toby laughing about how I dodged a bullet when I didn't get picked up. So I went through that interview. Then I had an interview with Kim Rom, and he said, I think it's going to be tough to get you in, but what we'll do is I'll talk to the staff and we'll get them to accept you. But the staff didn't accept me, as you well know. They weren't interested. Guys like Travis and Rod, and and I know you weren't too keen, and that was a separate issue, not a personal thing, sure. Just a business thing. But you own your decision. I totally respect you for it. That's not an issue. But he then came back and said, why don't we try putting you under a pen name, and we won't tell anybody it's you. And what I'll then do is, when everyone says, oh, who's the new writer in the staff room, I'll go, ha ha, it's Richard Lewis all along. I mean, this is the thinking of Kim Rom.
It's like WWE style.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
It was Richard all along.
And I was saying to Toby, I was going, this is really fucking demeaning, actually. This is really demeaning for someone of my experience to have to write under a pen name, simply to try and convince a bunch of people who aren't involved in the hiring process that I deserve to be hired for a reputable publication. And Toby was going, but if you just keep jumping through the hoops. Well, I've been jumping through hoops for months now. I've had 2 interviews, I've been promised I would get hired, and here we are. But I did it again. You sell your principles away and you just do it, don't you? Because you want to do what's best for number one. And I said, okay. And then we came up with Joe Interzone Edwards, of course, a reference to the fictitious place where a lot of William Burroughs novels take place, and Naked Lunch being one of my favorite books. So Joe Interzone Edwards drops this expose on ESGN. And everyone's like, oh, who's the new guy? And of course, most people clock on straight away. Well, it's Richard Lewis, isn't it? It's Richard Lewis. Of course, it's Richard Lewis. This is exactly his style. This is exactly his topic. He's been talking about ESGN for a while. Completely makes sense. And then, for whatever reason, and I still don't understand why, I know Rod Slasher went into an apoplexy about that. He was saying, if you have to write under a pen name, it's bullshit. The article's not even that good. This is terrible. I mean, Hunter said to me specifically afterwards when we talked about it, I'm really proud we published that piece. I think it's one of our best pieces we've ever published on the site, and certainly in terms of traffic and the rewards that it reaped, it was completely worthwhile. But for whatever reason, it didn't seem to win over the people that I needed to win over. So that article goes out. Everyone's making fun of me for writing under a pen name. People figured it out relatively quickly. Certainly everyone in the industry, guys like Sir Scoots and Robert Olin were messaging me on Skype going Interzone, lol, it was a little bit galling, but I explained why I was doing it to them, and that was fine. So then I get another interview with Kim. Another interview. I mean, keep in mind, this recruitment process has been over a period of months, and I'm just dangling it. I'm in limbo at the moment.
Sure.
And we have another interview, and he says, well, the piece went really well, and we're going to win people over, and blah, blah, blah. I should have an answer for you real soon. And I was like, great. And I was like, well, which way do you think it's going to go? He goes, I wouldn't worry if I was you. This is, I'm pretty sure you'll be working for OnGamers as of next month. So I was like, right, great. I've had it from Hunter. I've had it from Kim. I told the missus, I've got a new job, right? This is it. I'm finally going to be working for CBSI. Loads of opportunities for that, because I wasn't just thinking I'll work for OnGamers. I still kind of felt OnGamers would actually die a death. But what I was going to do was, in the 6 months that I predicted in my mind that OnGamers would be alive for, I impressed CBSI so much they put me somewhere else. That was the plan. Okay, that was the plan in my head. And then one night, about 2-3 weeks later, I got a call at 4 a.m., right, a message from Kim, can you do a call? 4 a.m. And went on the phone, and it was Kim, and he was strung out and tired and possibly drunk. And he said, well, I've got some bad news and some good news. And he said, the bad news is I haven't been able to win people over. We're not going to be able to hire you. You're not going to be able to join us at this time, and we'll probably need to revisit 3 months later. And then he went off on this mad tangent, started rambling incoherently about the challenges of OnGamers. And I'm just being polite at this point. I'm really pissed off, but I'm being polite, because all right, well, maybe let's not be the old Richard. Let's not burn the bridge. Let's not go too wild. And then the call ends, and the motherfucker forgot the good news. There was no good news. There was no good news, Duncan. That was it. Just get fucked. You've wasted 4 months of your life jumping through all of these hoops. See you in 3 months, maybe. So that was my experience with OnGamers and why I never ended up there.
I've got a strange
setback. Yeah. It was a huge setback at the time.
No, I mean, I can imagine. Let me ask you a strange question then, because I'm not asking this question to air people's private business and get the real juicy gossip, but I've got a strange question about Slasher, who you just brought up there, because I think this topic might shed some insight into maybe you and him, and just in terms of industry people, because as an industry person, Slasher is really weird in that I always used to tell people, whenever other people who knew I was friends with Slasher would talk about Slasher, who didn't know him, they would always, if they said something like, oh, he's just an idiot, or he doesn't know what he's talking about, I would say no, he's actually really smart, because I thought at the time, what he'd figured out that none of the rest of us had figured out who were known people, was how to market with everyone. He managed to get himself into a position where no one hated him, right? At worst, he was a harmless, annoying guy, He's the guy who'd harass them for stories, or he'd break a story. But even when he did that, it was never World War III, No one was ever hey, screw that guy, I'm never going to work with him again. And that's what he always did a good job with, was maintaining relationships with everyone. Even this is why I used to naively think he was really smart. I used to think he was doing it as a master plan. Well, one day I might have to work with that guy. And I don't think he actually was, but that was generally how it would work. Okay, he was very good at having everyone know who he was. and not hate him, which that might sound like not a big task to not have everyone hate you. But we're not that good at that, Richard. So I thought this guy's like fucking Yoda or something, like he could do this. So what I want to know is, how is it possible that for some reason Slasher and Richard Lewis, aside from years back, there's some impasse there that they can never get past? Because I would think if he could get along with me and he could get along with all these other people, he can even get along with people who've actually directly told him to go fuck himself. What do you think stops the two of you from getting along? Because is this something bigger about industry stuff? What is it, do you think?
I have no idea. I'm at a loss. I mean, certainly at various points I've been wrong. I mean, you know this from our relationship. You know, I've said some fairly awful things about you in the past, and genuinely regret them. And I'm sure I've done the same for Slasher as well. But I don't think I've ever crossed a threshold with him that couldn't be easily rectified. You know, there was a culture between journalists, or indeed anyone, you know, commentators, even players, whatever, where the idea was that if someone was being successful, they weren't being, you know, the pie was so small, you know, that they were inherently taking something away from you by having a bigger portion, which of course isn't true now. It may have been true then. But when you've been in the business a long time and you get entrenched in that culture, it was all too easy to go on social media. And we're from a time before Twitter. You know, as soon as Twitter came out, I used it primarily for the longest time just to snipe at people. I mean, that was what I saw Twitter as my window to do. It was like, all right, I can totally fuck with people now. This is great. You know, the people who didn't know who I was, I can call out their bullshit and write to them, and everyone can see I'm doing it. And that was one of the reasons why I got so many followers in the early days. I don't think it was necessarily because of my journalistic work, because no one really cared about the games I was writing about outside of StarCraft 2, because it was Call of Duty and Call of Duty 4 on the PC and Counter-Strike Source on the PC. But, you know, you get into an embroiled, elongated argument with a e-celebrity. You know, I used to gain 200 followers a day every time I called Total Biscuit a cunt. You know, it was
It's a nice bonus.
Yeah, well, no, but it wasn't deliberate. You understand?
Yeah.
I mean, at that time, whenever me and John did have a disagreement, you know, I'd be calling him out on things he said, and he would call me out, and we would go like that, and vice versa. And you know, all is good in love and war. Me and John are friends now. You know, it's all fine. But with Rod, this is what I found very difficult. Rod would always be like, "Hey, man, you know, why we don't need to attack each other. We're all journalists." He would promote this idea of brotherly harmony and love, that we need to stand together because journalists are few and far between, and real journalists are even more few and far between. People who are going to do like what he used to do back when he worked. You know, he'd do embargo news and this kind of thing. So, I used to be like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm real sorry about the things I said. I'm sure he's got, you know, apology after apology from me. Right, even when I haven't necessarily done anything wrong. And then what Rod would do is he'd go around and he would say things about me. Oh, I think, you know, Richard's bipolar. He's crazy. He's insane. He, you know, he can't be trusted. And it was just like, I'd be like, Rod, why are you telling people this? Why are you saying this stuff? Like, you know, I thought, what did we just talk about? It's all out of context. It's misinterpreted. I'm like, no, it's not, man. People talk. You should know this. This is how we get our information. There aren't going to be any secrets. If you go around bad-mouthing me or denigrating my work, it's going to get back to me. I'm going to hear about it. You know, so just tell me directly. You've got me on Skype, you know. And then, you know, this kind of went on for the longest period of time. As I moved more in towards breaking stories and leaking stories, I don't know if that particularly stung with him because that's what he was always known for. But it now just seems to be at the point where I cannot think of a good reason why me and Rod wouldn't be able to get along, but we absolutely don't. He proved that quite recently. So when he shit the bed at OnGamers and effectively pushed the self-destruct button with his violation of Reddit's terms of service, which again I think it's absolutely ridiculous that someone's future can be predicated on the terms and service of a website. And I wrote an article in Rod's defense stating pretty much that. But you know, he did of course Hey, Mr. Troll. Hey, Mr. Well-known, well-established troll. Will you do this secret clandestine operation?
You see the part where I said I used to think he was smart. Like I learned otherwise. You know, I think I misassigned some of the genius of his methodology. He had some things he was good about, though. So actually, let's use that as a segue point, because this will sound like, if you talk about Slasher and Reddit, that's like, haha, that's like the butt of the joke. Like, yeah, he didn't know how to use Reddit. He fucked it up. You know, journalists shouldn't do what he did. But if you remember the early days of Reddit and social media, Slasher's the reason a lot of us even started using it, because he was like, no. Like, he told me, like, in 2009 or something, like, you better, you know, get a Twitter account, like, make it, look, I'll show you, like, who to follow, do this. And at the time, I was like, oh, I just sort of did it to, like, make him stop hassling me about it. I was like, this will never take off. Like, we'll never be using that to popularize our stuff, you know. But he was right. A lot of this stuff, he was kind of like the guru on, you know, he's ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
And especially Reddit. He knew how to promote stuff. I used to put stuff on where I naively was in the old world thinking, right, of like, back when you just put stuff on a website, I would like put up a really good interview at like 2 a.m. and I'd put it on Reddit, and then it'd get like 2 upvotes over 2 hours, and then it wouldn't go anywhere. And then Slasher would be like, nah, you should have done it this time, or like, you know, you have to like look at what is there an event going on at that time? Has that player played the day? You know, you have to look at other factors. And so he actually was very ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff that everyone else had to figure out in the industry, right? So how could that guy be the guy who fell foul of Reddit the most, and it almost destroyed him? And to a degree now, I feel like that has kind of set back how journalists can deal with Reddit, even because it was actually shown that he was kind of breaking the rules. I mean, to draw an analogy, that's one of the only things that I actually felt really bad about with that whole Reginald scenario on Summoning Insight, was the fact that because I'd done it in the middle of a rant that was supposed to be this righteous like call to arms for journalists, like we won't allow sites to like bully us around and blacklist us, because of that scandal coming directly out of that, it not only overshadowed it, but it meant that then OnGamers, who were going to stand behind that rant, gave up all the ground I'd just sort of won back with my like charge forwards. And I feel like that's kind of what happened with Slasher and Reddit, because he was here's the thing people don't know. He was the one who used to represent us to Reddit when OnGamers had problems with the ban. So if he gets banned, that's like, well, cheers, mate, we're fucked now. That was our peace treaty guy, you know. So how could that guy be the guy who fell foul of it the most? And then also, like, does that say something about how content creators are going to interact with Reddit from here on out?
Well, I'll come to the second part in a moment. But yeah, so with Rod, I mean, you're absolutely right. This was a guy who was, you know, just really ahead of the curve. He kind of saw the social media, you know, bubble, or the future. He saw how it was going to impact on all of our lives, both positively and negatively, and was a big proponent of it. And that's absolutely true. And for him to kind of get caught doing something so amateurish in terms of violating their terms of service, when ultimately there's so many ways in which, as you rightly point out, this, you know, it's not gaming the system, but you're playing the percentages, if you like, you know, to benefit your content finding its audience. It seemed very strange that the old master, the guy who'd been there at the beginning, would need to dabble in such practices. But yes, so and just to finish the point from the previous thing, I after that, Rod really became kind of, I think, fixated on, you know, when he was in the wilderness post losing his job at OnGamers. He really wanted to come back and make a splash, but I think he was in such a comfort zone at OnGamers that he'd really forgotten how to get down and dirty in journalism. And I think he saw me doing it and didn't really like it. So, for example, when Robert Olin was removed, the CEO of DreamHack, obviously due to my relationships with DreamHack and my relationship with Robert, I was able to get that story quite quickly. Now, when Rod was struggling to find a job, the Daily Dot reached out to him and said, do you want to come into the Daily Dot team? We'll pay you. And he said, yeah. And then he said, but you know, you've got Richard Lewis there. I don't know if I can work for the same publication as Richard Lewis. There's too much bad blood there. And it was like news to me that there was bad blood at all. And then he agreed to join. And obviously I was breaking that story for the Daily Dot about Robert Olin. And he was going around messaging people saying, fuck letting Richard Lewis have this story. I need it. I've got to get it. I've got to beat Richard Lewis. I mean, literally, this is what he was saying. Okay. And then, of course, he published that piece at Aftonbladet after we'd broke the story. And he was really pissed off that, again, he was harming the publication that had reached out to him and was offering him the job. And then we put that behind us, and they came to me and went, Rod's saying some pretty crazy stuff about you. Are you all right with working with him? I'm like, whatever's good for business. I don't care. It's not a big deal. And he then had a job interview with us and didn't even show for it.
Well, to be fair, that might not be an indictment of like you. That's also that's maybe the slasher failing. Not always being on time, not always coming to the meeting.
So, yeah, true. But it was that. That's how strongly he feels about me for whatever reason. He's never explained it. Never going to. So, but back to the Reddit situation. This is somebody that I think it's almost as if for me the slasher that exists now is transitioning from being a journalist. It's like that doesn't excite him anymore. He doesn't have the motivation to do it, and he was moving towards being something quite different, like a social media guru type, whatever you want to call it, and obviously he's managing a team now at The Score, and that's great for him. And I'm sure they're going to be successful and whatever. But yeah, it was incredible that he would be the one to fall foul. And basically, he hurt everybody when he did that, actually. I mean, for all the credit that we will give him for introducing us to Reddit, he set esports journalism back when he did that. I don't just mean because he really practically destroyed OnGamers. That's the reality of it. That's not hyperbole. We know. I know Kim Rom put the estimates down to a more conservative 50%, but we also know on certain pieces it was as high as 80% as the traffic that was coming in was Reddit-driven traffic. Now, even if it was 50%, you can't lose 50% of your web traffic when your remit is to grow and expand in a year, or the funding's going to get pulled. And one of the reasons that I defended Rod was on that basis, that because the project was so short term, and we need to see these incredible measures and this growth within that short period, and if it's not there, we'll pull the plug. That does pressure you to do some stupid stuff, and I think Rod was a victim of that, actually, of poor management and poor guidance. But anyway, so it did set us all back in the industry. It absolutely did. Journalists, I mean, you got shadow banned off the back of that. You hadn't done anything wrong. I think Cyborg Matt did as well. I'm trying to think of some. I'm sure there were some others. I think Travis did and then got unbanned, I think. But this is so that sets you back just on a small level. But then in terms of on an individual level, I should say. But then in terms of collectively, all of a sudden there was all these rules, all these regulations, everyone's accounts were getting dug into, who's got alts, who doesn't, who's doing this, who's doing that. And of course the community, the Reddit community, who seem to believe that Reddit rules are actually a code of honor, a credo to live your life by, rather than just website rules and nothing really important, went out and made a bunch of value statements off the back of that. All of these journalists should be banned forever. If they're going to game Reddit, they're stealing from other people. They're stealing from other content creators that wouldn't have made it on the front page otherwise. And let's drive them out. So there was a backlash against all journalists in that time, and moderators, who we all know are a very special breed of creature anyway. They were puffing their chests out like, yeah, we're the real heroes in this story, and we're going to take it upon ourselves again to push back against these awful journalists who are manipulating Reddit, which is, of course, the worst crime you can commit in print media. So absolutely ridiculous. It was insane. Sorry, I should say online media, not print media. But anyway, so then, obviously, we all had to revise what we were doing with Reddit, and this is the second part of the question. I had to really think long and hard about it, because I knew, being as popular as I was with Reddit moderators, I'd always been very vocal about how the Reddit system is just an echo chamber of stupidity. The mechanics of the website actually promote that. It takes very little effort to downvote a dissenting opinion, yet it actively rewards groupthink. This is not a website that's very function is designed to promote diverse opinions and to respect opinions coming at from the opposite ends of an argument. In fact, what it wants to do quite quickly is establish a consensus and then reward everyone that's on board with that consensus. That's exactly how Reddit operates. That is its sole function as a website. So, and as a content aggregator. So I knew that anything I said about it was the people were going to watch me very closely. Now, I did have an account that was shadow banned way back when I first, like yourself, didn't really understand Reddit and thought it was okay to just submit everything. But then I started living religiously by the 9-1 rule. Religiously. You know, every day I would wake up, I would have my cup of coffee, I would read the news, what's happening here, what's happening there, and I would submit the news to Reddit. If it hadn't been submitted, I would submit it. And I was like, I'll jump through your hoops, because Reddit, unfortunately, for good or ill, was too important to have removed from you. But it seemed to me quite insane, the double standard that was present in the Reddit rules, and that was, if you created content specifically for a community, wanted to submit it and share it with that community, you weren't allowed because it was self-promotion. You weren't allowed to do that. Yet, if somebody else found your stuff and liked it and submitted it, and it made it to the front page and you reaped all the dividends, well, that was fine. That was absolutely fine. And then, wait a minute, what's that, Reddit? You like celebrity AMAs? Which happen at the same time as a celebrity is releasing a film or a book? That's self-promotion. And they're your most popular aspects of your website. They're the thing that actually you're willing to, be contradictory with your values. Like, for example, over the fappening, when all the nudes got linked out. And what Reddit was saying is they released that cringeworthy statement declaring themselves to be the government of the internet, some sort of new proto-democracy that we were all involved in, and therefore they had to act responsibly. Yet they allowed other subreddits to exist, subreddits like jailbait, subreddits that promote racist rhetoric, subreddits that indeed took photos of women when they weren't cognizant of it and judged them, or stole nudes from their phone and uploaded them to subreddits like that exist. You can find them, and yet none of those were shut down. But the celebrity nudes apparently was an ethical step too far for Reddit. So it's bullshit. I mean, they're liars and frauds if they pretend that they were doing it on ethical grounds. They were doing it because celebrities were going to withdraw that self-promotion that you're apparently not supposed to do. That's absolutely key to Reddit's success, because that's what drives traffic to the website. So the hoops we have to jump through as content creators, for me, are ridiculous. What I will say is recently they have been relaxed. Apparently we're told that moderators do have discretion now, and that comments absolutely do count.
You said that like people had just, when they talk about how like humans had to like discover the concept of perspective, like they couldn't see things, like they have discretion now, like they've gained that ability. They're almost like humans,
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, almost. But that discretion, of course, can be abused, and very often is. And as the former community manager of Reddit said to me directly, moderators are free to run their subreddits like jerks, and we won't do anything about it. And when I asked them, does that extend, say, for example, to racism? Like let's say if a moderator wanted to remove all content from one person because they were black. Yeah. They said, yeah, that's fine. They run the subreddit as they wish. Incredible to be told that. But anyway, side issue. But yeah, so they do have discretion now. And we've been told conclusively, finally, that the 9-1 ratio that you have to stick to, which is one piece of your content and 9 other pieces of content, but that also now includes your own comments. So if you do what I often do, and you put a bit of content out there, it finds its way on Reddit, and then you spend your entire time arguing with the morons who try and tell you that it's not journalism or whatever. Well, that's very easy then, because I certainly have to do that more than 9 times every time I post something. So, the relationship between content creators and Reddit is it's incredible. It's incredible that we're all so beholden to this website, and I certainly wish that wasn't the case.
So when I talked in those early questions about like transitioning from essentially from the old world of like we'll call it pre-Reddit, even though Reddit existed at the time, like we did, the main thing at the time wasn't that everything had to get on a Reddit and that was where you're going to make all the traffic. And because you didn't know at the time, you could get these masses of traffic for almost everything if you play your cards right, A different world existed of how much money you could make, what opportunities existed. That's one of the factors that's transitioned us into this post-Reddit world, okay? So in this post-Reddit world, there are only a few people who are really famous within this sector as like journalists, and they're well known and their stuff does really well. There's not many people. In fact, just in League of Legends alone, you'd be hard pressed to get past about 5 names when we're talking legitimately like very well known in the community. But here's an interesting trend I've noticed that has always repeated within the Reddit culture and this post Reddit world, because of things like what happened to a Slasher. There's always this assumption, okay, that anyone who's succeeding but does something that someone doesn't like is kind of like devious in how they're doing it. Like there's like a master plan behind it, and you know, like I mean, the obvious examples is like, oh, you just do like clickbait, or a better example would even be like, I mean, and we both get this, is like, oh, you're just edgy to like make people want to click your stuff. That's why you do it, etc. And listen, to a degree, if we're going to go into some super deep psychological level, I'm sure there is a degree to which sometimes we phrase things in a particularly barbarous way just because that's like fun to us, or we want to fuck with that person. That's like human nature, okay? But actually, from my experience, when I look at all these famous people I'm talking about, like say the 5 people in League of Legends and then the 3 or 4 in another game, I look at these people, and a lot of them, the reason why they're at the top actually is because they're talented, or they figured, even in a Slasher sense, they figured things out that other people haven't figured. They all have some merits to them that have really positive qualities that's actually spearheading their work. So when people think to themselves, okay, these people are just doing sort of these other things to become more famous. Like the end goal is fame, not success. You know, it's to be more famous, to be known as like everyone has to love me or hate me, whatever these things are, which to me seem like kind of side issues. Like they're either a bonus or they're a plague following you around, whichever way you see it. Is there a degree to which, at any point while you've been building this personality that exists now of Richard Lewis as the journalist, and this is his style of stuff, and this is how he comments, and this is all. Is there a degree to which at any point in time you ever have like made conscious decisions on these things? Because the kind of caveat I want to throw in at the end of the question is, people will often say as kind of a very strange backhanded compliment, they'll say something like, yeah, well, I mean, I follow that guy's stuff, but he's so biased, you know, when a journalist comes along soon who's just as good, covers the same things but isn't biased, you know, he'll be out of a job. And every time someone says that, my thought is like, how long should I keep waiting for that, mate? Like, have you noticed the trend is that all the really good people have this same problem that you're getting annoyed at? You want this person to be not biased, never say anything wrong, but do all the same work and have the same drive. And I've never seen anyone who had those qualities. So there has to be something within us journalists that's maybe not being communicated, or maybe we are doing something that's part of becoming the best. I don't know. What's your take on this topic? It's kind of a tricky one, right?
It certainly is. I mean, first of all, I think we need to address one of the fundamental kind of dichotomies in the esports community, which is we all want authenticity. Okay, everybody in the esports, we want authenticity. We don't like fakeness. We consider that not a trait, and I think that applies to society in general, but certainly it's magnified in esports. We don't consider that to be a trait worth aspiring to, and we don't value people who have it. We don't seem to like it. Or equally, we say to all of our personalities, we want you to challenge us. Actually, you know, we want you to be, edgy, as the word is. But whenever, and there's a lot of value in doing that. There absolutely is. I mean, there's numerous examples of successful people in esports who have gone down that road, and I would argue quite deliberately so. Too Good, I think, would be a good example of that. He's never shied away from baiting controversy, and people, while several people have rallied against that, the consensus is generally that that's a good thing for him, that it works for him, and we should all love him because of it. That's the consensus we've arrived at. So that's fine. But then what happens is, we challenge us, say these edgy things, but whenever you say something that does challenge them, and whenever you say something that they don't like and secretly, they really have an issue with on their core, they just scream in your face and tell you how dare you, and you need to be driven out of the industry and put in chains and sent to some sort of purgatory and everything else. And they seem collectively to lack that self-awareness to realize that, one man's meat is another man's poison. That, all of those things that were edgy and offended other people that you were laughing at, just because they've now pressed that one button within you, doesn't give you the right to whip everyone up into an angry mob and have this person punished for it. But that's what we do in esports. That's how we operate. And I think that's incredibly hypocritical and incredibly stupid, actually. That is the nature of the business. You're always one step away from, you can say something and it's fine one day because of who sees it, and then you can say the same thing the next day and somebody else notices it, whips up that mob, and all of a sudden it's a problem. And also, as well, as we found out recently ourselves, depending on who you are and how you're positioned within the community, you can say the exact same thing and it be okay if you're a popular presence, and not okay if you're divisive, which again, ridiculous, insane. And I think anybody who looks at that objectively would realize that that is insane. It doesn't make any sense. But that's esports. That's literally, it's an industry driven by popularity. Everything we do, everything we monetize, all of our revenue streams, it's hits, it's clicks, it's about appealing to the lowest common denominator, which brings me to the second point, which is a lot of these people who are successful, actually successful, not people like you and me, who I would know. In fact, actually, I guess the distinction needs to be famous. All of these people who are famous and no doubt get incredibly wealthy, I would make a distinction between you and me that I would say we're successful because we're adept and very good at what we do. And the people who can see that and get past the thing that I was just talking about realize that, actually our work is good. It has quality, it has merit. That to me is success. But to the people who are famous, they do appeal to that lowest common denominator and they make a point of it. You'll ask them privately, what do you think about something? And, they'll go, well, he's a fucking arsehole, and, I hope he gets shot. Ha, 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 ha. Then when it comes to their stream, why don't we leave that guy alone? Can we all show some tolerance, guys? And you're like, okay, well, I know the real you, and you're saying that on stream. And it's not just you're presenting how you feel in a different way, smoothing the rough edges off. You're actually saying the different thing to what you believe. You're saying the exact opposite because you don't want to be inflammatory, and you know it will appeal to that lowest common denominator, and you know that the best way to be successful, the best way to have a large following is offend nobody. That's it. That's how you do it. You have to be as bland and banal as possible. And by avoiding offending anybody, you will never have a hate group that will grow like a malignant tumor in the fucking in this sphere of popularity. That's how it works, you see, because fans, people who love your work, they never go to the same extremes as people who hate your work. I mean, they never do. That just goes. It should go without saying, but I find that quite interesting because fan is the derivative of fanatic. It comes from fanatic. There's someone to be so fanatical about you, they'll go to great lengths. And again, when it comes to players, I've certainly seen some examples. But who's more fanatical than a fan is somebody that just hates you for no good reason. They will stalk you. They will find out where you live. They will harass you. They will not allow any piece of work that you produce to go without them passing comment on it, as if they are somehow part of this process. And they're not. They're not important. They don't matter. They never will. They lack the courage to create anything themselves, and they just attack those that do. And a lot of the time, they started out as fans. I mean, that's the worst thing about them. I read this every day. I used to be a fan of your work. Then you said that one thing that I didn't like. You triggered me, and now I hate you, and I hate you forever, and nothing you say can redeem that, and I will stalk you till the ends of the earth and make your life miserable. I mean, so there's a level above fanaticism, and that's haters. And the truly famous and the truly successful, the truly wealthy people, the people right at the very top of esports know that. They know you can't have haters because they grow. It's not just enough that they hate you. They actively go out and recruit. They're like Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on your door, like, do you want to read Watchtower today? No, I fucking don't, mate. Please stop this. Like, if I did, I'm a pretty worldly guy. We've got the internet now. There's no need for Jehovah's Witnesses to be going door to door. But it's this idea of being proactive in recruitment. It's the same with people. It's the same with people who hate Thorin. Same with people who hate Richard Lewis. They go onto Reddit and they go in every article. Hey, remember the time he did this? Remember the time he said this? And hey, support my opinion, like me, upvote me, validate me, join me on my crusade. And that's why people say, well, we can't have that. We can't have those people. How can I How can I win? How can I avoid that? How can I find the people who are maybe hovering on the precipice and win them over? Again, prime example recently, Nightblue, made a fatal error in reporting Cutie Pie. The storm in the E Cup, it's completely irrelevant. It makes no difference. You can't make a value judgment about another human being based on that. But they did, and oh my God, how dare he do it? And the donger, we all love the donger. This is unacceptable. This is the level of intellect we're dealing with here. So Nightblue, rather than just do what I would do and be like, "You're fucking idiots." I mean, you are an idiot. If you are upset about that, and if you're judging my personality based on that, you are a moron. Do not pass go. Do not collect £200. Think about what you're doing with your life. Really think about it long and hard. Okay, that's all that needs to be said on that matter. But no, what does Nightblue do? He's already in a changing space. He's already losing viewers. He's already dropping down. He's seen Cutie Pie actually replace him as one of the top streamers on Twitch in League of Legends. He still gets good numbers, but he was pulling in, I think, 3 times as many at the point where he announced that he was going to be part of TSM as some sort of, very slick advertising thing. No chance of getting near the LCS whatsoever, but let's pretend. He's a sub, okay? But anyway, so what does he do? He goes on Reddit and he not only begs for forgiveness, genuinely begs for forgiveness. He asks, and like I said, this echo chamber of stupidity that is populated by people who have no life experience whatsoever. The majority of people on that Reddit, are probably teenagers. I don't think that's an exaggeration. And he asks, how can you help me become a better person? It's like asking Adolf Hitler for advice on race relations. It is ridiculous. It is stupid. It is beneath him. I can't even believe he did it, but he did it. And do you know why he did it? He didn't do it because he thinks he's going to get good advice. He doesn't do it because he's going to genuinely assimilate all of the information that's thrown at him and convert it into a life lesson and grow and develop as a human being. He did it because he wants to be seen to do it, so people come back to his stream and go, "Well, I used to hate Nightblue, but now that he's rewarded me and given me my ego stroke by telling me I'm in a place to teach him a life lesson, I feel comfortable watching his stream again. Actually, he's a good guy. He made a mistake and he admitted it. Let's reward that. Let's reward that and pretend it's not about the other thing. It's not about me. It's not about my ego." That's exactly how it operates. So. It's just these people that have been successful are actually the most cynical and manipulative people in the industry. Me and you, Duncan, we operate in a PR vacuum. We don't have a filter. And that, for me, while sometimes, I'm sure you'll say things even I disagree with, and I'm pretty liberal and broad, and we've talked about this, and I'm sure I'll say things that you disagree with, and you'll wince and go, "Oh, that was a bit fucking stupid. Richard, what have you said that for?" But at least it's my honest opinion. I'm not trying to cynically manipulate you and convert you into revenue. I'm saying what I think, and it could be good, it could be bad. If it's bad, I'm not necessarily going to apologize. But if it's wrong, and there's a difference, if it's erroneous, I'll certainly apologize about it and admit my mistake. But I'm not trying to manipulate anyone. Yet me and you are seen as the devious and conniving presence.
We're the evil masterminds, right? We're gaming we're even gaming people's emotions.
We're
triggering them.
Yeah, we lack basic, or rather, it seems. I know we don't lack it really, but we just elect not to adopt it, or it's not as important to us, or we're not hardwired to do it. But how can a mastermind, a devious Machiavellian figure, lack that essential critical faculty to realize that you might want to say the other thing, you might want to say the popular thing? We never do that. We're quite open about what we think and what we feel, sometimes to our detriment, a lot of times to our detriment. Yet we're the devious ones, we're the conniving ones, we're the manipulative ones, we're the ones publishing the clickbait, we're the ones exploiting people. And yet the people who come on begging for forgiveness and presenting them the illusion that they matter to them as individuals, they're the good people. They're the good human beings. They're the examples of people we want more of in our community. And if people can't see that, and I understand now, of course, this is how politicians get elected. This is exactly what they do. I've sat and watched political campaigns. Of course, we've got it at the moment in the UK. 100 days to the general election it was recently. As if 100 days to a general election was some sort of landmark. We've had rolling coverage across all of the news channels about, what's Farage up to today, and Cameron went to a pub and Miliband went to a school. No one gives a shit. But of course, they're on the campaign trail. And I always watch that and think, no one can get took in by this. This is ridiculous. This is so transparent. David Cameron goes down the pub and, is there a journalist there? Is there? Oh, I'm drinking a pint. I'm just like you. I'm drinking a pint. Hey, working man. David Cameron, Etonian, Bullingdon Club. But he's one of the guys. Look, he's got a pint of bitter. And I look at that and I see, who's going to fall for that? Who's going to fall for that? These people fall for it. The majority obviously do. It's obviously very effective. There's someone out there going, blimey, have you seen David Cameron drinking that pint of bitter? He's one of us. He's like a regular Yorkshireman. Let's go. Do you know what? I was never going to vote Conservative, but now that I've seen David Cameron drinking a pint, I realise now that he's got a fundamental humanity at his core, and he's just like me, and it's okay to embrace Conservative values, even as a working class person from working class. People do this. It's that easy to manipulate people, and it makes me despair. And in esports, it's even worse, because anyone with half a brain should be able to identify the level of cynical manipulation, and yet they can't. And they're not Machiavellian masterminds at the top. I think it's almost as if they just lack that level of self-respect. That's how I like to look at it. I haven't got that lack of self-respect to debase myself in that way to make money, and I hope I never do, frankly.
So the way I kind of set that up, where I was talking about that issue, I've kind of got a question now, because I kind of asked, a part of it was like, well, there's a trend that all these people who are the well-known good journalists are also the ones who have the personality that can be divisive, okay? And so part of that is obviously it's like passion. When that's misconstrued, that's taken as like hatred and these sorts of things, So as an aspect of that, I have a hypothetical for you. And this is one I know as a real world principle you're actually against, because you're against the idea of like having an alias yourself and having a persona. Now, admittedly, when you said that years ago, like I said, to a degree, even if you don't have an alias and a persona, you don't have an alias, which is Richard Lewis, and you don't have a persona, which isn't entirely who you are, but it's who people take you are as you are. Okay, so within those bounds, in the book, there's a teenage book, it's quite a famous one, Ender's Game, okay, and in this book, there's a little section towards the end that has fuck all to do with the rest of the stories. It's not a big spoiler, okay, where one of the characters creates like two different fictional identities, and they start writing sort of like political sort of like manifestos or like polemic rants under these character names, okay? And like the two different characters are sort of like politically opposed, but the idea is what these people are doing is they're trying to like foment a certain change within society, or they're trying to like lead the way like the group mind thinks about things. And what's interesting about this concept is, if we could take that, because the whole point is no one knows at the time who these characters are, okay? They're actually children within the book, but they're like hyper intelligent children, and so by writing under these names, people in society think that these are like great political thinkers who just have to write under an alias because they're so brilliant, and like they can't reveal who they are in case it was politically dangerous. So what I'm going with this is, as a hypothetical, knowing what you know now, like the way esports is right now, like at the moment right now, Thorin doesn't have to go to an event. I can do everything online. In theory, if I didn't do video work, I could do it so that I could be back in the old days. People could never see who I was. They wouldn't even have to hear my voice. I could just write articles, and assuming people liked them, they could still be popular. If you could go back in time now and you could get to this point in time, you could sort of start esports journalism now with all your skills, but instead of Richard Lewis, you never have to show your face, you never have to let people know who the real Richard Lewis is. You can just pick any alias in the world, and you just start with all your skills, and you can just do the same work you're doing now, but you just never have to attach your personality to that. Would you actually like that if you could do it? Would you still be able to be successful, do you think?
It's an interesting question, and I suppose it's almost like a derivative of that heady Kim Rom experiment. That he was,
yeah, I'm bringing you back on to OnGamers Smart 2 here, man. You want a job, but keep it on the down low. This is all just an elaborate interview process. It's not really.
It wouldn't surprise me. I can't imagine why anyone would want to watch an interview with me at all.
You never truly get out.
But okay, so right, it is a difficult question because on the one hand, I mean, there's a fundamental human element right at the core of everything we do. That when you're good at something and you're adept at something, I think it's actually hardwired into humans, and I'm sure. While I don't have any studies to hand, I'm sure we would see it in all primates. You know, that you want to show it off. You want people to be aware of it. You want people to know. As children, we crave validation from our parents initially, and and then peer groups. This is how we develop. So I think anyone who says they're happy being behind an alias and being successful would be a little bit disingenuous. In fact, I can't think of many people who've started down that road that have stuck to it. Think about Phone Jacker. He had to do Face Jacker, didn't he? And then he had to become an actor as well. And now he's not called Jacker at all. They use his real name for things. So there's probably an example of someone who did remain anonymous and was incredible, and we have no idea who they were to this day. But for the most part, I think people want to be known for being good at something. It's just a human nature. So with that in mind, I certainly couldn't deny that I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to start now and be anonymous, be an anonymous presence. But it's not just because of that. I'm acknowledging that because I don't want to be disingenuous in my answer. But I don't think it's conducive to journalism, actually. I think being a journalist specifically, you have a responsibility to put your name on what you're reporting. Now, there are certainly good examples for why a journalist may want to obscure their identity. And there's certainly good examples and good reasons why you would put something out under a pen name. But for me, for the most part, there'd be something incredibly problematic with somebody that was out there reporting about, other people's business, other people's, potential wrongdoings, perhaps even making allegations about things, exposing secrets, and doing it behind an alias. As I said, certainly when you're punching so far upwards, there's a chance that you may be, if it's, for example, a corrupt government, you may get, a special rendition, killed, whatever. There's certainly validation at that juncture. But this is esports. I don't think, as crazy as the fans are, I don't think I'm ever going to get kidnapped and held in a dungeon like Old Boy, for a prolonged period of time. There's no need for me to hide. And I think it would be irresponsible for me to do that. I put myself front and center. I take great care. I'm very meticulous in my work. I pride myself on my accuracy, and I pride myself on only ever putting things out there that are true and within the public interest, in my opinion. And therefore, with that in mind, I need to be accountable, and I can't be accountable if I'm behind an alias or an alternative identity. So I think it's very important for what we do that we're front and center. What I will say is I did drop the Gonzo brand, which was always kind of a joke anyway, and it just stuck. I mean, what happened was, again, this is quite interesting. I don't know if we talked about this in the last interview, but I back when I was playing CSS, I didn't really understand. It was the first esports community I really embedded myself into, because I was writing an article for a magazine, and that was how I got into it. And they said, this is coming out. It was 2005. This game's coming out and it's going to be big, so go and write an article about it. The article was meant to be a series of articles about online gaming communities and how you could enter them and not be quite so noob, so that was the pitch. So I went in and I got embedded myself into it, and I really threw myself into the work, and I wanted to learn about every facet of it. So there was this exploit that was going around that made your wall see-through. And I was part of a public server community at the time. And fuck it, I'll just use this exploit, see how people react. I think it'll be interesting. So I, wall hacked or whatever you want to call it. And the reaction, Duncan, was incredible. People recorded it, put it up. you're banned. You know, it was like death by exile. you got put out on the ice and just floated out to sea. But people that I'd been playing the game with and interviewing and gathering information about didn't want to know me. You know, it was very strange, and I was really perplexed by this reaction. So I did that because I needed to learn about the the kind of I wanted to learn about every facet of the community. Now, I used to play under the name Castro, obviously from Fidel Castro, which was just, again, a funny little thing that I did when I went into the community. There was several other people who used to tag up as dictators. It was just something to do. And what happened was, on the back of that scandal, I'd started writing just voluntarily for several Counter-Strike Source blogs, because I could see there was really no journalism about Counter-Strike Source in particular as a community. And I was like, well, I'm a journalist. I can write about this game, and I'm writing an article about this game anyway, so I'll just write about it, and I'll submit it to blogs, which the blog that I submitted stuff to was Source Junkie. Anyway, I got a message. It might have been on IRC or whatever we used at the time, and they went, look, Rich. Because of this public server exploit thing, we're going to have to remove you from the publication. I was like, what? We can't accept your high quality voluntary work anymore because a handful of people on the internet are outraged by it. Now I'm like, I'm in my early 20s. Are we being serious here? Is this really how it works? Is this how it works on the internet? Is this how it works in online gaming communities? That even though I'm giving you something for free that you can monetize, and I'm doing it out of, camaraderie, and wanting to be part of something and learn about something, you're going to reject that because of this other thing I did here for experimental purposes? Yes, absolutely. So we again, this guy must have been a student of Kim Rom before I even knew Kim Rom. He came up with the idea of, well, we need to adopt you another pen name. So Gonzo became the writing persona, Castro was the playing persona, and of course Richard Lewis at the center of it was starting to wonder whether he had multiple personality disorder. So I had to ditch all of that. I know, no disrespect to you, because obviously you're called Thorin. I know the reference. It's The Hobbit. It must be especially nice for you now that they've bastardized that wonderful children's book, and made a trilogy of films out of it, with fucking Orlando Bloom in it as Legolas, and horrible action sequences.
I finally got the cool associated with my alias that I always hoped for.
Yeah, I'm sure that's good. But then that's fine. I understand why people would have a brand, but there was some part along the process where it was like, actually what I'm writing here is, I'm doing exposés, I'm doing investigative journalism, and yes, in some cases I'd argue a little bit of advocacy journalism as well. I need to put all that childish stuff, or what seems childish to me, again, it's not a value judgment on anyone else, I need to put that childish stuff to bed now, and I need to be Richard Lewis, the man, the journalist, the adult. All of those aliases were just affectations that I needed. You couldn't play a game without a gamer handle.
Yeah, sure.
So that's why you had to have it. You couldn't write on a website without a gamer handle. Not in esports. It may, people were like, well, who is this guy? Why has he only got he's obviously never played. He hasn't got a gamer handle. So, this was the thought process. But now I think, we're at a much more mature place. And there's no need to have any of that stuff. To me, it kind of felt a little bit like baggage. The guy I always wanted to be was just me, just myself anyway. And I didn't feel I could do that initially in esports because it was very strange and confusing for me when I first got into the scene, as I'm sure you can imagine. I'd heard about it back in the late 90s and early noughties, and had even written a few bits and pieces about it, but I didn't really embed myself into it until 2004, 2005. So yeah, it was confusing to me, and I kind of went with what everyone else was doing to learn about it and embed myself into it. But we're in a much better place now, in a much more adult place now. There's not really a need for me, with what I do, to have a persona at all. In fact, if anything, it would be detrimental to my work if I did, I think.
Okay, well, along those lines then, because you took us way back in time there to like a different world of esports.
It is a different world, isn't
it? One of the themes of this interview, because it's something I've been thinking about myself as my positions have changed in even months in the past, is that it's so difficult to actually predict, no matter how close to sort of the pulse you are, where things are going to be in esports journalism in even a year from now. Like, I can't really tell you, because a year before it was drastically different, and a few months now things could be a little bit different, and who knows what the knock-on effect would be. But and in general, I'm actually quite shit at like really long-term prognosticating. You know, so that's not really my style. You know, I try to just like analyze the moment. So I want you to take a stab at it though. Thinking of where you were a year ago, 2 years ago. Where will we be? I want to go crazy here. Where will we be, Richard, in 10 years? Like, if esports is still here, if you're still in it, will it be at a similar level, but just like a bit more money? Will the games be bigger, but maybe the journalism will be similar? Will like I be writing for the Times supplement as like the edgy columnist who's like the Asian guy who rails against everything? What will you be doing? You know, can you give me what your sense is at the moment?
Well, okay, so this ties into what you've always talked about, which is about people who are lifers. You know, they're in the industry for life. Now, I don't necessarily know if I'm one of those, and I even don't necessarily think that you're one of those. You know, we're certainly going to be in it for a long time. We've already paid our dues many times over and helped shape the current landscape in which we exist, and I'm sure we'll continue to shape that landscape for good or ill as we move forward. But ultimately, we're going to grow up, we're going to grow old, tastes are going to change. I often think that me and you and people like us, you know, not just me and you, not exclusively me and you know, I'd even argue guys in other areas, you know, guys like Red Eye and whatnot. We're not going to be the guys that get the big payday, the guys that are going to be held up on a pedestal when the industry does inevitably grow and become mainstream, because it will. On a long enough time scale, there is no way esports can fail. There's no way. You only have to look at the society's tastes for technology and technological development. You only have to look at the fact that we are becoming more fixed to our computers and more interactive. You only have to look at the rise and the proliferation of gaming, and I would even argue perhaps an inherent bit of laziness in Western society. There is no way in the Western world, and certainly some parts of the Eastern world as well, esports will not prevail. It just, there is not one trend that points to that, and indeed everything points to the opposite. But I don't think we'll necessarily be around to see that landmark moment when esports finally hauls itself out of the amateurish swamp in which it still currently resides and into being akin to something like the Premier League, the NFL, the NBA. You know, whatever. I don't think me and you will be there to see that. Not because we'll be dead, but I think we'll have decided to take our talents elsewhere and have moved on to pastures new. I mean, maybe that's not true for you. I've always got in the back of my mind that it is for me, and I say that. You know, with the caveat, I might just be lying to myself because, you know, to justify, you know, why I keep doing it.
Keep yourself going, have a little target for the future.
Yeah, I always say, you know, one more year. That's how I operate. I think that's how I get to the next landmark, and I think that's what actually propels me forward. The idea that this year is the last. I try and work harder. I try and do more. I try and have a more profound impact, because it's going to be the last year and I want to go out, and then gets to the end of the year and it's okay, it's time to do the retirement post, you know, it's time to do a retirement interview, Ocelot style. And then I don't do it. I say, actually, I can probably tolerate one more year. But that's not always going to be true. So to ask where I'm going to be in 10 years from now, I mean, I certainly think esports will be huge. I think it'll be great. I think the genuine sadness that I feel is I don't think I'll be much remembered after I leave esports. I think even with the work I've done this year, and there was a wonderful comparison, it meant a lot to me to hear it. You know, with the CSGO match fixing scandal, somebody said that's the esports journalism equivalent of the shoeless Joe Jackson story, this landmark moment in sports journalism in America. But I don't think I'll be remembered. I think because of the nature of the work that I do, I think, you know, people will be kind of, you know, they'll move away from that. And with the high turnover of people we have in the industry anyway, you know, people come in for a few years, the kids come in, they play the game, they get bored of the game, they leave. What was esports all about? They don't care. They go to university, they discover alcohol, drugs and women, and they have a good time and they never come back. With that high turnover, I don't think anyone will remember me at all, actually. So I think it's essential in many ways that I do get out at some point, whenever that might be, and I do something else. Let's say theoretically I was still involved. I imagine I would be a published author. I'm currently having talks about book deals at the moment, and I imagine I'll be one of those quite sad talking heads that get wheeled out from time to time to talk about how far esports has come. And we're here now with Richard Lewis,
veteran reporter,
veteran reporter, author of the definitive book on the history of esports. And I do 5 minutes on some CNN report, and it's quite ghastly and awful. But they pay me my appearance fee, and that'll keep me in food along with the royalty checks from all the books that I published. So I imagine if I'm still involved in esports, that will be my future. I certainly don't see myself at events or watching games or anything. But it's just the nature of growing up. It's just the nature of growing old and becoming an adult. I hope that's a lie in a way. Part of me would love that to be false and would love me to still be in the trenches, sleeves rolled up, even in my 40s and 50s, like, that fucking Slasher, on Twitter or whatever. And as esports gets more sophisticated, hopefully I can write more sophisticated stories about the sophisticated wrongdoings that are going on in a sophisticated manner. But it's probably not going to be for me in 5 years, honestly, and I'll feel happy with my contribution. I will love the industry to thrive and everyone who's still in it to be successful. But I think people like me and you, we've got talents that we can apply to other things, and perhaps even arguably more important things. And I think it would be a little bit remiss, actually, if we didn't do that, or at least attempted to.
At the end of the last interview we did, I kind of closed up by playing a game where we would, because I knew you were into comic books in your younger days, I would ask you to compare an esports industry figure to a comic book character. For this one, I want to do something along those lines, but what we're going to do is I'm going to name like a person within esports, and instead I want you to just see if you can come up with like a movie character that would describe something about them, or maybe if you want to make it funny, like the story of their life in terms of who they are, who you consider them. Like basically, like we're trying to see from your perspective what you think of them, but using some of your movie knowledge, because I think movies, admittedly, that might be one of the flaws when I did this question before, is that other people had to have actually read comics to know who the fuck half the people were, so yes. I hadn't thought that part through, So everyone's watched movies, so I feel like we're on safer ground here, Richard. Okay. So let's start off for the lols. We'll just start right out with Slasher. Who the fuck is Slasher using like a movie character? Could you describe him? Or just something essential about his nature?
So I didn't like it when you did this to me in the last interview. And
I feel like the hilarity, it's primed.
No, but the point is the hilarity is prime. But these are the kind of bits that you need to rehearse and know about in advance. Obviously here I am. I consider myself to be quite a cinephile, but you know what it's like when you're put on the spot and you're like, right,
okay,
compare this person to this person. Go, like who is he? And you're like, shit, I've got nothing. It's like I've never watched a movie in my life.
Let's do this then. Start to kind of list the qualities that you're thinking of, and we'll see if we can work towards someone.
Okay,
or some sort of a character.
Rod for me is he's quite a comical character in a lot of ways. I'm not even necessarily saying that in a bad way, but he is quite a comical character. He's always struck me as, he's got that stoner drawl whenever so this breaking news is happening. He reminds me of Steve Wright, the comedian, in the way that vocally, but equally in the way that he, his failed attempts to be Machiavellian, it's this inverted comedy. So I guess we're looking for a character who believes themselves to be the puppet master, but actually isn't. Believes themselves to be able to manipulate and influence people, but actually falls quite short of being able to do that. So I don't know. I just had an image pop up there of Butters from South Park.
Okay, a bit harmless, but yeah.
But as Captain Chaos, trying to do all these things to people which are actually inconsequential and quite risible. And I don't know how accurate that is, but it did just pop
I like it, though.
head.
I like it.
Okay, well, we'll go with that. It's not a movie reference.
No, hey,
reference.
it can be just a fiction reference then. It doesn't have to be movie references. We'll broaden the so keeping along the similar lines of just my anticipation for where the answer could go, even if it isn't as good, I just enjoy the moment in which it could be hilarious. So along similar lines, a legendary man within esports who cuts quite a profile. It's obviously Travis Scafford.
Wow. Talk about throwing me under the bus for that one. So
I just wonder where you're going to go with it. What direction, Richard?
Okay, so this is such a harsh thing, but we're honest. Like, okay, so first of all, there, as you know, I think there's a slight element of tragedy in Travis, and I'll qualify that, and I'll explain why. Travis, I know from talking to him, is somebody who he actually wants to do good work. He wants to be a good journalist. He really does.
Well, here, actually, just to tag on to that for a second, doesn't that statement in itself kind of tie into what we said before? Like, even Travis would be someone where people would assume he's manipulated everything and he knew exactly how to hit the common denominator and to get this guy. And really it isn't. He's also just trying to do his best stuff and trying to work in this way, and he thinks he's doing this and he thinks this is going to be the outcome, and it isn't always the way it goes, and he can't always perfectly navigate. It's an interesting analogy, because most people naively would probably think he's the example of the guy who knew how the game was played and did it all that way.
No, not at all. And Travis is probably one of the people who most acutely feels it when a piece of his content actually fails. He, he's talked about it with me, and when something doesn't hit the front page for him, he sees that as an abject failure. When it happens to me, I'm just, fuck it, they're idiots. Next piece. I wouldn't say I'm the most resilient chap, but Travis, it really is. But not only that though, he's trapped into a hell of his own making. Okay, because Travis wants to be a good journalist. He wants to do more good work. Like he did some good stuff surrounding the LMQ situation. Obviously, OnGamers, have broke some big stories before, such as riots, rules about streaming and that kind of thing. Travis wants to do that. Okay, but his interviews are so, and specifically the format of his interviews is so successful and so popular, and what the kids want, he's kind of wheeled out to do them, like, almost under duress. Oh, so hey, Double Lift, it's good to be interviewing you for the 5th time this week. What did you have for dinner today? I can see in his eyes just this lifeless sheen of, well, this has to stop. So, I in that sense, I think Travis is, there's an element of tragedy, but also it's got to be said, again, and I hope Travis will forgive me for this, and if he wants to do a similar character assessment or character assassination, he's more than welcome. I'm a big boy, I'll be able to cope. I also think as well, there's like this kind of, like, it's almost endearing, but not quite. There's like this kind of, like, I've seen how he operates at events, and he is kind of a little bit like a star, but kind of a crap star.
Okay.
Kind of a crap star. So when not even a B-list, sorry, like a C-list or D-list celebrity really sort of coping, coming to terms with the fact that they've taken their first step on the ladder upwards to fame, and they're dealing with, oh, can I get a coffee? And the person goes, yeah, sure, I'm a runner, I'm here to meet your every needs. Oh, it's kind of cool, okay. And they sit back self-satisfied with themselves. I've observed Travis in his natural habitat of being at events, and that's what he's like. Can I get sugar in that? Okay, cool. And there we go. That's kind of what Travis is like. So I guess with that said, he does strike me actually as almost like a David Brentish character. From The Office, and I guess and not entirely, but perhaps there's a lot of overlap between the two, because this is someone who actually at heart wants to be, kind of more than what they are.
So he's quite earnest. Yeah,
but it's quite earnest. Is a nice guy, prone to, kind of perhaps being a little bit, again, what's the word? A little bit kind of self-aggrandizing at times.
Okay.
But actually, when it comes down to it, the person inside the frame of the human being is actually, quite earnest, can be quite endearing, and ultimately wants to succeed, and perhaps not even necessarily in the way that they are succeeding. Like I say, I hope Travis doesn't take any great offense at that, but certainly I know from conversations this is a guy who definitely wants to be more. I hope he goes on to do it. I sincerely hope when this whole OnGamers thing gets put to bed, we can see the hard-hitting, cutting-edge Travis. He always says that to us. He goes, like he doesn't have it in him to be like you and me, and I'm like, you don't need to be. You don't need to do that.
No, not at all.
Just be yourself. Do the work you want to do. But I honestly feel like he's a little bit trapped by the success of what he's already done.
So being as one of my best qualities as a person is that I don't really have any shame, in a sense. Okay, like I don't mind.
That's your best quality.
Yeah, that's my superpower, Richard. Like that's what's allowed me to get this far in life. Okay, for the sake of hilarity, I have to ask, who would I be? To Richard Lewis, obviously. Who am I to you in that sense? Which character would you pick?
Okay, well, this definitely is a complex one because, who are you to me? I'm sure everyone on Reddit, when they watch this, will be expecting me to say you're like my Robin. We're this dynamic duo. You complete me or whatever. I often get accused of having a homoerotic relationship with you.
They think we spent like time in Nam or something.
Yeah.
We, like one of us saved the other one from like a landmine or something, and we're like, forever, man.
So
I think they might have over romanticized it a bit.
Yeah, it's a tough one because look, you embody a lot of the values that I hold dear as well, and I think you're successful in a lot of ways that I don't think I actually could be. I certainly admire your gifts in a particular area. The biggest thing you've got for me is how prolific you are. I don't know how you do it. Because first of all, I couldn't motivate myself to do as much as you, but equally I don't know how you fit it all in or how you find that work-life balance. Completely envious. I wish I could be as prolific as you. But in terms of personalities, I'm trying to think of where like classic moments where people have been partners and are on the same side, but kind of there's this one turning point where they break away and they can't quite get along and they realize there's some fundamental differences and they're not the same, they're not entirely identical, and it creates a little bit of conflict, but in the end it all gets resolved, kind of like Captain America and Iron Man during the Civil War run in Marvel Comics. Where Captain America is actually against the Registration Act and Iron Man
proposed
Stark,
it, pretty much.
Actually is behind it and thinks that they've got a responsibility to do it, and these are people who admire each other, and of course ultimately it leads to the death of Captain America and the spoilers, it's okay, it's Marvel, no one stays dead forever, and of course guilt and remorse on both sides. So I think we have that kind of dynamic actually. But I definitely couldn't say you remind me of either Iron Man or Captain America. That would be too. Okay. That would tie into that homoerotic thing. So let's think. I'm trying to think of something from the movies as well. Come on, Thorin, help me out here, man.
What type of person are we looking for here?
Well, you are difficult, dude. You can be. This is the thing. You give fuck all away, like nothing, never a flicker, like serious. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but when I talk to you and I'll be talking about stuff, like just when we're at an event and we're talking, I think, okay, so you just look for telltale signs about does this person approve of this? Does he disagree? Nothing. I can never tell. Like I could be saying the most mortally offensive thing. Just nothing going on. I could say the thing that Richard's actually made this life-changing bit of information. No, I'll never know.
The problem is that's like my interview skill, because I don't want the person telling me the crazy thing to think like, oh wow, this is really inappropriate. If they think it's right, I want them to be like, yeah, go ahead. No, keep going. I'm just the silent monitor, just taking it all in. Wow, that's really fucked up. Yeah, make a note of that. Yeah,
So
it's true. I admit that is quite true.
Yeah, you've got to be someone like that as well. So someone that's just almost like you say, the observer, the person that's always there, but almost above it all. And I say it's hard. It's hard to really kind of ever know where you are with somebody. Like I'm sure there's been periods in our relationship where actually you've been thinking, wow, Richard Lewis Rich is just, he's gone off it, man. He's changed. He used to be all right. He's really fallen into this dickhead hole, and he's struggling to climb his way out of it. But of course, I would never know, and I would see you at an event, and I'd be like, hey, Duncan. You'd be like, yep, what's up? Just as you normally do. What's up? The nod, the nod from Duncan. There you go, and that's it. And so I mean, I think it's partially me. I always struggle to know where I stand with people anyway. I'm always kind of secretly in the back of my mind thinking
a combination of the two of us, then.
Yeah. So it's definitely a combo. So who the fuck are you from fiction? I'm looking at my fucking bookshelf to help me out here. Please, there's got to be something. I know. I feel like what I'm doing is I'm not answering the question, and I'm just breaking down observations.
No, they're good. People will be interested to know.
Observations about people. But I know, come on, Thorin, give me a guy who just stands there in the background. There you go. You would be, I think you're like Mike from Breaking Bad. There you go.
Okay, that's quite a character.
Trouse.
Okay.
Yeah, literally just a stickler for the rules, gives nothing away, doesn't really let personal feelings interfere with business, deadpan delivery. That's Thorin, Mike Trout.
Okay, quite an indictment there.
Or a compliment.
Yeah, it goes both ways, I guess. Okay, do you have any final thoughts to wrap this up? Do you have? I mean, obviously the whole interview's been like thoughts from you, etc. Do you have like a final message to leave people on though?
I don't know. It's incredibly tough to sort of summarize. We've covered so much, and there was probably so much more that we actually could have covered. I definitely want to talk a little bit just about kind of the esports landscape and how it's shaping up. Okay. We're entering a golden age, a hashtag golden age, as Riot might say, where, I mean, put it this way: there's people out there. And this is the pitch. They say, invest in esports today. It's the cheapest you're ever going to get it. And all these big companies are coming into esports, and mainstream media are really trying to ingratiate themselves to us by treating us seriously after years of abuse and making us comical figures and linking us with school shootings and gaming addiction and all this other stuff. Now they want to be our friends because it's print media and mainstream news isn't reaching that demographic of the 14 to 22 year olds. Esports is that demographic now and is increasingly becoming a bigger market share. So they're all coming in. And they all want a piece of what we're doing. And they're going to position themselves as friends. It's going to be like the conquistadors when they came in their shiny armor and the natives came down from the hills bearing gifts of fruit and said, hey, we can all be friends. The conquistadors said, yeah, come down. They ate the fruit and then they cut their hands off and sent them back up the hill. And that's what the mainstream media and all of these cash cows will absolutely do to us if we go to them bearing gifts. We need to absolutely be careful about this and remain rightly cynical. So I think we're entering a phase where esports growth is going to happen, where there's going to be more money, more opportunity, more... more status attached to it. ESPN's going to be writing about it, broadcasting it. BBC started to write about it and broadcast it. Magazines, talent agencies like WME coming in, people who manage musicians and film stars coming in to manage esports talent. Everyone wants to run a talent agency these days. Amazon acquiring Twitch acquiring the Good Game Agency. This is going to be a golden age for esports in terms of opportunity and what our output is, and the people who are in a position to shape that, I think their better nature will probably get lost in the opportunity that many of us who put 10 years, 15 years in your case, all of this time into growing esports. I think there are people out there that are going to be susceptible to sell their principles. As I talked about earlier, it can happen to all of us, and they're gonna sell out, and esports could become something horrible and something really inorganic and manufactured and far removed from what we know it truly is about, and people like me and you have wanted to help it retain. So with all of that in mind, the final thought is that, unfortunately, for good or ill, the vast majority, that awful majority I've spent the bulk of the interview railing against, is going to be the watchdog. It's going to be the moral compass of where the industry heads. And I just hope people aren't going to be deceived and manipulated and cynically taken advantage of and allow themselves to be so in the way that they have in so many other areas. Because if they do, they're going to wake up and they're going to be like, hang on a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. They're going to get conscripted into something that, well, on the one hand, they're being told, no, it's fine, you won't go to war, it's okay, we all just run up and down hills with backpacks on all day, you'll be fine. And then the next minute, they're going to be getting shot at and think, what the fuck did I do? So I certainly hope people can just start to be a bit more broad-minded, a bit more, just adopt a healthy level of cynicism and apply it to the right people. These companies, these individuals, these huge conglomerates are going to look to exploit you. They're going to look to monetize you directly. And there's going to be a handful of people out there that actually care about the development of esports, and they're going to say some seemingly unpopular things. And I want people to be able to separate the wheat from that particular chaff, just remain broad-minded. For example, I saw Sir Scoots where he was talking about this unregulated betting in CSGO and how he feels it appropriate to contact, at least put them on the FBI radar. And everyone attacked him for it and saying, you're trying to destroy the scene. He isn't. He's spent probably a significant part of his life trying to build the scene up, and he's a very talented man, very wealthy man, a very highly skilled man who works for companies like Coca-Cola and things like that. He doesn't need to be in esports at all. He's here because he loves it and he's passionate about it. Last thing he wants to do is destroy it. And he's certainly entitled to his opinion. And they're the people that, we should be having an intellectual debate about, because they do care about the industry, but they're saying this thing. So maybe he's got a point, or maybe he's misguided. We need to have an intellectual level of discussion, but we're not. What we're saying is, let's boycott Scoots, let's drive Scoots out of business. The Counter-Strike community's got to push back against him and get rid of him. If we do that, we are going to become little more than a marketing division of a conglomerate company, and we're going to be sat around 5 years from now wondering where the competition went, why it's turned into pro wrestling. I don't want that to happen. And the way that you keep that from happening is by supporting the people who challenge the people who want to make it into that. So that's the final thought. That was a bit Jerry Springer-esque, actually.